So he's just.
Good morning.
he doesn't have his permit yet, but it's good.
This is the Weare Capital Improvement Program Committee meeting. It's our first meeting for fiscal year 2018. We're resolving today. And my name is Jack Dearborn. I'd ask that the members introduce themselves.
I'm Stu Richmond.
I'm Jan Snyder.
Sherry Burdick.
Steve Roberts.
Bruce Fillmore, the planning board representative.
Thank you. Before we do anything, I think we need to vote on officers, chairman and vice chair.
I'll nominate Stu for vice chair and Jack for chairman.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you.
You second it? Thank you.
Any discussion?
I move nominations closed.
Thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those no? Being none, and abstentions being none. Thank you. First piece of business is I have forwarded to Craig Francisco, who is the chairman of the planning board for the town of Weare, and I nominated, and I'll read the nomination here. This is a letter I sent to Craig through email. Hi Craig, I've nominated I have a nominee / candidate for the Town of Weare CIP committee as a public at large citizen member. Gary Shelto is a long-time Weare resident, 30+ years. Gary has extensive experience managing large utility tree trimming company, Asplum Tree Service. As vice president of the Hampshire State District, he was responsible for the purchase, maintenance, fleet rotation for his district's business operation and capital equipment to ensure his team had the necessary equipment in order to meet the corporate objectives for cost and schedule performance and customer satisfaction. I believe Gary has the necessary credentials to augment the town's Weare CIP committee. I submit Gary Shelto, Weare resident of Gould Road, as a citizen member to the CIP. And I said, as a CIP chairperson, I request you please approve Gary Shelto as a CIP committee citizen member. Thanks, Jack Dearborn. And I got a response back from Craig saying, Jack, he sounds like a good candidate. He certainly meets my approval. Good luck, Craig. So with that, there is a member, unfortunately, he had a commitment today, but he commits to pick it up in the next couple of weeks. I just wanted to hand out to each member a copy of our policies that we operate by. And probably the most important thing is that what the intention of the capital improvement committee is that it's large items that aren't considered to be expendables during the current year. What I mean by that, we have a threshold of $15,000 and up for a candidate for this. It can't be recurring in nature, like an expense item, or like purchase of large capital items such as trucks, vehicles, land, buildings, and or large upgrades to, like for instance, a roof on a capital asset the town has, and also roads. So that's pretty much what we do. I just wanted to hand that out so everybody had it. Last year, the residue of last year's series of meetings was this package that I presented. Naomi and I kind of put this together from all the information that we did through the year. And this is sort of what it looks like. It's a package that I presented, handed out to the Finance Committee, Planning Board, and the Selectmen. So Naomi needs this back, but I'm happy to pass this around for people to take a look.
I don't need it back.
You all set?
I don't need it back. I want it back.
Wants and needs.
I don't need it. He can't have it today.
Can always get what you
Okay.
want.
It's kind of frosted side.
Sorry.
At this point, we have Chief Bob Vazina of the Fire Department, who is here to present the CIP. Good morning, Chief.
Can you share for now?
Yeah, we can, yeah.
Actually, I got it. Is it three sections?
Yep.
Okay.
Go, three.
I thought I would start by talking about last year, briefly. So last year in our attempt to become a little more self-sufficient, I guess, we looked at changing the way that we were doing business, which was to move some the way we paid for the labor for the daytime costs into the operating budget so that we could return that stream of revenue from EMS billing, which we were diverting for that cause, back into the apparatus fund in its entirety, minus what we pay for the actual billing service itself.
Well, Chief, not everybody might know of the EMS fund. That's the revenue you receive for charging out for ambulance services.
Yes, yep. So when we transport, it's only on the transport, and if we transport someone to the hospital, we have a rate schedule that we bill those services out to.
You may want to give you
And so back in 2011-ish, 2010-ish, we started to use that revenue for labor to provide that service. So it was, and they were diverting that into a revolving fund, and then they were paying the labor out of that. It was my opinion that, and I guess ultimately the opinion of the voters, because they approved it, was that money had more value going into a fund to accrue from year to year for the purchase of large capital items, which we implemented in 2017's budget year. And we had an estimate. We went into that endeavor with an estimate, and so I'm happy to report that we are far exceeding what our estimate was over the last couple of years, and we're well on our way to that goal, which is to have a large sum of money to pay for large capital purchases in the future.
Is that basically increased activity as opposed to increased
Not
charging?
necessarily. We changed the way we collect a little bit. So we are a little more aggressive on the collection piece. We're operating at a higher skill set typically, and that puts us into a different billing rate, which is a little more expensive. Our collection efforts are a little bit, like I said, a little bit more aggressive, and so we're recovering more revenue than we had been, or the percentage of revenue we're collecting is higher than it had been in the past. We did some other tweaks to the process that allows us to capture more. And all of that is translated to having really a banner year, which I know Beth gave you. Did they have that? With revenue numbers?
Oh, I just have the balance.
Yeah, so we're kind of on pace. We had based our estimates on revenue of about $120,000 a year. We're probably, this particular year, we're probably above 150.
That's
so, in collecting, yeah. Yep. So all of that is translated to put more money in the bank for future capital purchases, which means less requests ultimately to the taxpayer.
So can you clarify that? In 2016, you collected 120,000? Is that what you're saying? And this year you're at 150?
Yeah, we had, when we went into that, we made some assumptions, and the assumption is that we would collect about 120,000 in revenue, and we exceeded that.
This year?
This year, and we exceeded that last year as well, so.
So what was the number last year, total?
That
It was 127?
Yeah, probably 127 that hit the bank, because we pay the expense of actually collecting that, so we're probably in the 130-ish.
Okay, and this year we're at? right now, over 150?
This
No,
year,
we will be by
currently,
year-end.
we're at
115.
115.
yeah.
We've made our lease payment, which is due at the end of the year. We already have that in the bank for the ambulance that we purchased last year. We made our lease payment last year for the ambulance. We purchased a forestry unit out of that money. And we've already banked, like I said, the payment for this year. And so everything from here on out is essentially just money in the bank.
Going into the fund.
So we had three, we have nothing on the schedule for this year, but we have three in the out years, in the 6-year out year thing that we're looking at. They all, I thought they were a little bit staggered, but apparently they all hit next year. In 19, not 18, but in 19, the following year. And those are in no order. What do you have first?
Capital reserve fund. Money going into.
Car
I
one.
have thermal imaging.
Thermal imaging, all right, let's talk about thermal imaging cameras. So our thermal imaging cameras are devices that allow us to see, instead of seeing visually through visual light, it actually, we work on infrared light, so it allows us to see through smoke, it allows us to see in the dark, those types of things. Very important tool, because it gives us sight back that normally we wouldn't have. So that's hugely important. We have two different sets, two different cameras that we employ, and this is just the replacement of those units that are out there. So we have 5 that we currently.
How old is the current ones? Are they staggering in age?
They are staggering in age. I don't know if it says it in there, because I knew that was gonna be a question. So we have some that are, we have 2 different age groups. We have 2 different models. We've been having issues with the, what is probably the earlier of the 2 different models, where it's just, and they operate on batteries, so you have battery maintenance issues, you have technology changes as things evolve, and then the ones that we, the older ones are larger, and the newer ones are a little bit smaller. And so this is the replacement of those as we go forward. And that's in,
Yeah,
again,
basically,
that's
this
in
is,
19.
this is where you go into a building, smoke filled, and you're able to identify the difference in temperature, which the shape of the body would be somebody there.
Yeah, they operate, basically, they can differentiate between 1 degree Celsius, and so you can see an image where you wouldn't necessarily see an image visually, but you can see their heat signature because everything gives off and absorbs heat differently.
So if you go into a building at 115 degrees, you're gonna see a body in that picture?
Yes.
Yeah, you'll see, it'll operate up until you can't be in the room anymore. Yeah, and the important thing, and it's not just, very important in a building fire, but it also works if we're searching for someone that might have been thrown from a car at night, or we're searching for perhaps someone that has Alzheimer's that's walked away from their house, you know, like where you can't see visually, it gives you your sight back because it's looking at things through a heat signature instead.
Right.
So it allows us to see right through smoke to look at.
Yeah, you can find hot spots and walls and stuff with it.
Yeah,
right?
It's amazing what you can see. You can see studs in a wall because it all works off of how the temperature is absorbed and radiated back into the atmosphere.
Yeah, I've used them, but I've used older technology for heat loss.
Yeah, very similar. It just more, it operates on a specific scale. Very important piece of equipment. We have a boat. Is the boat next on the list? We have an inflatable boat. That boat has been around for quite a while. It's a very stable platform. The problem is that it is a rubber boat, and it's not the swiftest piece of equipment to get across body of water. Sometimes it's not important, but sometimes we'll launch at Chase Park to get across the the water at Forest Lake takes a bit of time. So this is looking at the replacement of that to something that would probably give us a planing ability, so we had a little bit more speed. With that, it'd still be an inflatable, but probably might be a rigid hull inflatable kind of thing.
Your-
But the same, more or less the same size.
Your ambulance fund, that's for rescue purposes? What's it fund?
That is for the replacement of vehicles. We're gonna talk about that.
Well, I was kind of wondering if this boat could utilize that.
We'll talk about that in just a second.
Okay.
In the last one, and again, that's in 19. And so last year, when we came in and we were looking at vehicles, and so the history of the fire department is they've kind of always gotten either a used vehicle or a hand-me-down vehicle. The last two that I've been in have essentially failed inspection to the point where it
It wore out when you got it.
Yeah, one was definitely wore out when I got it, the other one was unsafe to drive when we got rid of it.
Are you using the old forestry foil drive at this point?
Yep, and so, last year I came in and I said, you know, the pickup truck that we have is undersized for how we're using it. So we replaced that with a larger chassis, vehicle. And then I took the pickup truck to replace the Durango, and that's my daily driver to go out and do inspections and all that other stuff. It has, so it's a Ford 350, regular cab. We put a cap on the back. It's not weatherproof. It serves the purpose of getting from point A to point B, but it's not a very good platform for all the other stuff that we do with it.
What are you looking for as a replacement? What's the attributes? Just a daily driver?
Probably looking at, like the Explorer, SUV kind of, unit, something that gave us, well, obviously gives us all-weather capability, which is important, and gives us a little more storage, weatherproof storage and conditioned space storage, because right now, some of the equipment that's in the pickup truck is in the back. It has a cap on it, which isn't entirely weatherproof, and you're still subject to all the humidity and all the atmosphere. And dirt. Yeah, and it's not, and the stuff's not really secure, and the cab of the truck is full of stuff, and it's a platform to get us to the point where we can buy something different.
Okay, so your intent is to get like an SUV Explorer,
Yeah.
and that'll be all the equipment that would be your mobile command post, so to speak, your radios and stuff like
Yep,
that?
because that did not transfer into the pickup truck because mainly the waterproof issue.
Right. And what would you do with the F-350? Would that be sold?
My intent would be to keep it. It doesn't have a ton of miles. I want to say it's about 60,000 miles, 50,000 miles, but it's a 2003. But it has the snowplow. Right, we're using it with the plow. It's kind of our, when DPW can't help us out, or we're, you know, during that snowstorm event where we're trying to get into someone's driveway and those kind of things.
Okay.
My suggestion is we keep that.
Just wanted to ask.
Yep.
So this is 2019, these three items.
2019.
Do you hear anything else you want to talk about?
I wanted to just bring it up because I think what worked out well last year is we were able to educate the different boards and groups of the funding mechanisms of the labor for the daytime group and the value of banking that instead, and that all work together to get us to where I would like to go, which was to move that expense into the operating budget and back. So The vehicle, so the capital reserve fund that the money goes into from EMS billing, the purpose of that fund is to purchase replacement vehicles for the fire department. And so what my proposal would be is to tweak that language to include the purchase of equipment as well, which would allow us, certainly in 19, to maybe look at some of those items that,
Like the microbarometers, they have the.
like a microbarometer,
Which is.
thermal imaging
different.
camera, whatever else is in the boat, in the car, we could, by current purpose, but to tweak that so that we could remove even more things that look for money to be raised by taxation.
And we had a year to do it, because you're not looking for that this year, so.
Right, and again, when you're looking at out-year items on schedule, they kind of plod along, and then as they get closer, we kind of evaluate, is that something, fiscally, could we push that off to make room for something else that is, a higher priority? Or is it just, in the case of a vehicle, it's like, it looks like we could get a couple more years out of that, so what if we just nudge that out and move those things around?
Chief, I got a request, and it's, I think it's a relatively simple one. And I'm gonna be asking this of the highway department, is that you got a schedule of all your vehicles, and you'd like to have something like the years, the mileage, and or hours, if there's an hour thing. And even though they may not fit in the 6-year window, I'd like if you could put a probable date of replacement, even if it goes beyond the 6 years. So there are some long-term items, which may be your fire trucks, like 15 years, I don't know, I'm making this up. And we won't see that, but it'd be kind of nice to see that, so we can at least have an idea of when you expect that to happen. And I'm gonna ask this of the police, I'm gonna ask this of the highway department, because there are some, especially you and the highway department, there are some very long cycles, such as a grader, an excavator, that would take 15, 20 years. We don't necessarily see it on the 6 years. It'd be kind of nice to see what it looks like going out. And it doesn't have to be anything like this, it just has to be a schedule of your vehicles. And put everything on there, and even the stuff you got here, your cars. So,
Okay.
thank you. Anything else, Chief?
No, I brought some information if we wanted to talk about radios at all. I know that's a subject that came up at the selectmen's meeting.
Yeah,
We could do that at some other venue,
what I'm trying to do.
but I have that with me today.
What I'm trying to do is get a handle on what the need of the town for the radio system. Like, the police and the fire and the highway department all operate on the same frequency. You have different receivers and transmitters, but the antennas are multi-coupled. So, and the placement within the town of these. So in other words, if the highway department can't make communications, they drive a mile and they get the communications. If you show up on a scene and you've got 40 people there, your ability to communicate back to the mothership, back to wherever you need to go to, is critical. And especially a police officer, when they show up on a site that they've been called to, there could be a domestic violence, you're going in there not knowing what's happening, usually one person. And the ability for that person to communicate back is important. So there's different roles for this thing to play, different criteria for each group. I'm gonna try to work with, I personally try to go and gather that information. I got some experience building radio systems in my career, just to go off and kind of understand what the needs are. Then the question becomes, and you happen to have the contract for the overall maintenance. And although that the fire department and, the police department and they have their own budget for some radio maintenance. So I think what I'd like to do is sit with you, sit with myself and other people that are interested, and try to gather what the needs are. Then the question is, how well is the infrastructure meeting those needs? I mean, Benji might say, I'm happy with everything we got.
Yeah.
But you may have a particular issue when you show up on site, you need to communicate amongst all the 30 or 40 people that show up and also communicate that. Whereas the police may have a slightly different requirement that they have, so. Over the next couple of months, I'd like to, whoever would like to join me, at least go off and understand that. Whether it's ripe for this year for requests or not is another question. We've been incrementally improving the radio system at the top level, like the antennas, improving this antenna here on Mine Hill. But there's still a question of, are the placement of the voters appropriate for the town versus what happen to have a system available to stick an antenna on? And that gets into coverage, probability of receiving and transferring and being heard. If you have some radio stuff you'd like to go over briefly.
Well, we did, what was originally, I think, part of the CIP request last year, which was to provide AC power into the repeater sites.
Correct.
That was decided at the end of the year to use fund balance to pay cash for that, as opposed to bringing it forward into a warrant article.
Right.
So that the update on that project is we put out requests to get proposals, I guess, to provide the electrician stuff that needs to be done. And we have our radio contractor who's going to take it from the 110 socket that gets provided to the radio piece, and then we have the Eversource piece. And so we gotten pricing on all of that stuff. We had our pre-construction conference, I want to say, in the spring, just so we were all on the same page. And we also needed to talk to really two other people. One is the owner on Eleanor Way, because we have to cross their driveway if we end up with that site. And the other piece was the Army Corps of Engineers, because we're on their property at the dam down in Clough.
Just for everybody's benefit, Mine Hill, right in back of the coal mine, left shoulder, is the central broadcasting antenna. That is on AC power, and I think it actually has backup.
Yep.
All the remote voters, which are basically an antenna on a tower, and there's batteries in there charged by solar. And it's basically a duty cycle related, meaning that if you never transmit or receive on that voter, or the minimum number you do, will allow you to operate for a certain number of hours. If you have to have no power because it's covered by snow or overcast for 3 days, and or you get a very high intensity of communications in that area, you could run out of power. So the intent was to AC power them, as well as, I don't know if you consider it also as the backup, the batteries.
Yep.
Right. So if power's lost, at least has some ability to run for a while, but at least power by AC, which means you may have to bring power from public service and hook it up and change the power supplies around. So that's what Bob's talking.
Yeah. And so we operate 10 of those sites. 7 of them were solar powered, and some have just they would just fail on a. So they're used quite often, and so they would just run out of power and fail. So we determined what the cost would be. The electrical contractor has done 3 of them, I think, are complete. Of the 7 that they're doing, there's 2 more that should be complete by the end of next week. They need to be inspected. Then they kind of get the green light for Eversource to come in. Some need poles set, some are direct drop off of the existing electrical distribution system right onto our stuff. So we have, and everybody knows we need to be done with that project this year, this calendar year. So we are making progress there, and that should be up and running, and we should see. I very much expect to see improvement in the signal strength from that. We've also reached out to the owner of the Norris Road cell site, which is US Cellular, I think. Whoever it is. They've gotten back to us with some information that we needed so that we could work on a propagation study, looking at that site in.
Did they tell you where they're gonna give you the access for the antenna?
They gave us two different spots. So they own two poles and two towers in town. The one we were talking about is down on Norris Road. That would put us around, I want to say, it's 88 feet is the highest part on that tower. So that, again, once the R&R does their survey, we'll get some sense of what type of coverage we get out of that, if it's an improvement over what we have or not, and then we can factor in the cost. There's at least the $8,000 cost just to really for the application. So what the total cost of that project would be, I don't know at this time, but that would be something we'll easily be into next year.
So there's a tower on the south end of town off Norris Road. Where's the other tower in town? You said there were two.
Well, there's one up, I think it's behind Dimitri's more or
Yeah,
less.
not
Oh, up on top of that, that's high,
Uh,
yeah.
Back, so, yeah.
Toby Hill Road,
Yeah.
Memorial Hill to Toby Hill.
Yeah.
There's also one more tower. We don't necessarily have as many issues in the north end in that particular area, but there's a tower up, is it Boyce Road or somewhere else?
This Boyce Road, you have one on Coffee Stage Road.
Yeah.
You have one on Forest Road.
Yeah.
Forest.
So,
Different companies, though.
yeah, like I said, different areas have different challenges. That isn't necessarily an area that we're super challenged in.
You're trying to take advantage
Northeast.
of current antennas to improve our coverage.
Yeah,
Essentially.
we're looking at where those holes are and what we need to do to. So we're getting power up. That's pretty low hanging fruit. I don't know how we ever put those in place the way they were designed. I don't know. Something I
It
inherited.
made sense back then.
Hey, Chief,
I guess because the sun was out. Yeah.
can you explain about, with just the AC power, dialing them up, how that's gonna
Yeah.
improve without changing
Just
the
the solar sites, there's a certain amount of, I'm not an electrician, but there's a certain amount of power that's available stored in the batteries. They try to maximize the amount of time that the system would run without recovery. And so they kind of match the power output of the radios to maximize that. So the radios aren't necessarily operating at full power. And this is very generically talking, and we may find out that it's almost negligible, the difference between full power and what they're operating at. But they've been kind of matched to the power supply. So if nothing else, we should be able to see an increased level of power because we're gonna have.
Your cell phone does that. And they're continually communicating with the tower to minimize the amount of battery power in your cell phone, so it doesn't drain it. You have more.
So it's it's almost like EMS billing. It's not an easy subject to talk about because you have to just ramp up on the language so you can understand what it is that, what the vendor's talking about and what it's. So there's a lot of complexity to even the discussion, but our system has a lot of complexity because it has many parts to it. They get the signal from the person sending a message on the voice message to dispatch to come back. There's probably close to 10 different steps.
And then you have confusion going from the car to the handheld.
Right,
No.
right, and there's all, and so when someone says, because it happens in our shop all the time, and I do it myself, it's like, I can't talk to dispatch. Dispatch couldn't hear me. Well, why couldn't they hear me? Is it because my portable radio battery's not charged up sufficiently? The repeater's not really talking to the mobile radio, the mobile radio's hitting the repeater somewhere. That repeater is working, is that the primary one for this area, and that's not working because it's a cloudy day today. That signal's gotta get up to Mine Hill. Mine Hill sorts out what's the best signal we're gonna use, then they grab that one, they send it to dispatch, goes down their tower through their console, they listen to it. They talk some garbly goop back to us, it goes back through the whole system again, and so when someone uses a generic statement of, the system didn't work today, well, where were you, what were the circumstances, so that we can try to isolate as best we can what the issue might be, so that we can focus on that.
So is there anybody that reads this on a daily basis?
We
Who's in
have,
charge of reading the map as to where, what's happening?
well, so an individual might go out and say, geez, I was at 145 East Road and dispatch couldn't hear me. And then you may get some other people that, on that same thing, say, well, I heard you, so that might, so in order for this person to hear you, we know that certain parts of the system work, and so the issue might not be our system, it might be Goffstown's end, so it helps us narrow that down. Our radio vendor records our transmissions, so that they can, if we give them a time and date, they can go back and listen to that and get a sense of, is that a modulation issue? Is it's totally scratchy, so that might indicate something to them,
So are all the towns in the area, as New Boston, Goffstown, Henniker, Hillsborough, they all have the same problem?
Well, we operate our own standalone radio system, and Goffstown is our dispatch center. New
Right.
Boston does the same thing.
Right.
Goffstown does the same thing. For police and fire, they're both, police and fire's radio system is somewhat codependent, separate in ways, but codependent in others.
The question is, do they have the
Yep.
same issues that you're having?
Oh, we all have some issues. Now, when you go to the north and east, you run into Capillary Fire Mutual Aid Compact, and they operate essentially a county radio system. So they're they're simulcasting, so they're transmitting from multiple sites. That's all has to be timed perfectly, and so their system is much more robust than ours. And so they've faced the same challenges in other communities where you might need more than one antenna to get to all parts of the town, but they have the resources and the infrastructure to kind of surround every community that they operate in.
The FCC limits the power that you can transmit and receive.
Correct.
And the challenges of the geographic, meaning hills, and think of VHF, which is what they transmit on, as line of sight. It's not exactly line of sight. If you can't see the tower, if you can't be close, in other words, you can't have the tower on the other side of a hill, you're not gonna get it. So the question is, it's all about propagation for the most part. Do you have enough antennas to cover the geographic of the town and enough power? And you can spend $10 million and never get 100%. It's just a quirk of the way the geographic town with the hills and valleys and all the foliage, different times of the year, will change the whole equation.
Oh, yeah.
So what you're trying to do is make incremental improvements. There was the power, EC power, which was the big issue of operability. And then the question is, have we got the correct tower placement? Why is that an issue? Because let's say we needed to have an optimal place at Frank's house. Frank, would you mind us putting a 60-foot tower right beside your house? Well, no. So the question becomes, where can you put towers? And when they did this 15, 20 years ago, cisterns were available for a placement for some of these, like on Bartlett Road. But it's not on the optimum place for that, but it's the only place we had easy access. And it happens to have AC power, so they can actually go the next step in power, so you can have reliable power. So there's a whole bunch of issues here, where if you wanna spend $1 million, you come out with a brand new system, and it may not, it may work better, but it's not gonna be perfect.
Yeah, and like I said, so police and fire, we share the repeater sites, so their equipment's in with our equipment. Highways kind of on their own thing, because their infrastructure is not as critical as ours. Because we're codependent, fire is invested in, or is vested in finding solutions to these issues. We could easily go to capital area. We could say, thank you, Goffstown, it's been great, but we're gonna go over here because the coverage is much better. And I personally believe that would be a good solution for us. That doesn't save the town any money, because it's gonna cost 4 times as much money to go there per year, and you still have all the infrastructure for the police. So you're not saving a dime that you're gonna spend a dime. So we've been working with trying to make this system better, and there may come a time in the future where, it's like, what, we're not getting anywhere, and for fire's conversation is it would be better for us to go somewhere. So we're trying to make this, and I don't think we're beating a dead horse. I don't think we're throwing money out the window. I think it's an expensive endeavor, and Weare has kind of been this island, and you see it a lot in this section of the state, where you have these independent, where Goffstown and New Boston Fire all operate their own fire radio systems, where most other communities have already gone to a larger mutual aid system, whether it's Southwest or Capital, or Milford, or something.
Milford, Cheshire.
Yeah, so it's not an easy solution, and I take and I heard the conversation at the selectmen's meeting, and so I just wanted to discuss some of that here. That I'm committed to get the most value of the money that we spend, and I think that we're moving in the right direction. And I appreciate the support.
Thank you, Chief. And thank you for the support to our community.
All right, thanks.
Frank's gonna be.
Moving right along. Now we're gonna hear from the police department. We have Lieutenant Frank Heber here. The first we called Frank, so I've been corrected a couple times. With that.
Good morning, everybody. I will apologize, I have 5.
Beth made some
color copies.
So, Jan
We
needs
can
one.
share.
Jan will need a set, and,
Did we get 5?
We play together well, right?
You should have
she's
5 there.
got a black and white copy if you want one.
Forever.
Yeah, they're sharing.
She made some black and white copies, so
Oh.
the ones I brought are.
Do we need one more copy?
Jim needs one.
Thanks.
Okay.
Guess we don't have to share.
There's only one.
Frank will need, Frank has never been, so you have to kinda,
I'm standing in for Chief Kelly today, so just a little guidance here.
Wait for Jan to get back and we'll start.
Of course, the first one says urgent.
It does. Flaming red.
where it's put is a different discussion, we're talking about capital needs.
Okay.
So if we opt to put one in the budget and one in CIP, it's really, it's two things. It's weekly. Watering, everything going up. Everything is perfect.
What's happening? Is it half too fast half of
Not supposed to be, that's good news.
I'll let you know.
I couldn't get someone else to box. Yeah, right.
That's okay.
It's a great question.
Okay, Frank, you're here for Chief Kelly, and you're welcome to make your presentation or have a conversation how you want.
Thank you very much. Well, I'll go through the main points, if that's okay, and then we can enter into a discussion if that's suitable. So what we're asking for in this application is for 2 additional cruisers. The Weare Police Department must replace, we're saying, 2 fleet vehicles that have exceeded replacement mileage, age, and/or repair thresholds for safe operation and emergency response to assist the town.
So these costs, is this an escalation of the last year's purchases? So,
The 10%,
how much?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the question.
Well, we kind of know what we paid in 2017 for the 3 vehicles, divided by 3. That's not only the vehicle, but that's also the stuff that goes in the vehicle.
Correct.
And this price is for 2.
Yes.
So it kind of says it's like 44,000 or 44,500.
And on this colored sheet, you'll see a breakdown right there. We have a 2018 cost breakdown, the one that has the cruiser in the center of the sheet.
What my question is, I need the answer to it. Has this price been escalated for purchases in 18?
We estimated 10% because those prices are not available to us at this point.
Okay,
So we had to pick a percentage, and February is what we're assuming that number would come in.
okay, just so we understand, last year's cost, actual cost, ended up being like 41,500 per car.
Right.
Okay, so in this number is an escalation for
Correct.
anything you can't tell because you can't get the price on it.
It is not available at this point.
Okay, so this is inflated by roughly 10%, correct? A good number? Correct. Okay.
Okay, so
Right.
just to back up for additional justification, the 2016 fleet maintenance surpassed the budget after just 3 months and continued to climb throughout, hit the budget negatively throughout year end. Now in 2017, as you know, we have 3 new Dodge Chargers. We've taken delivery of 3 new Dodge Chargers. At this point, as we stand here today, we have just 1 that is actually being used for patrol that has been fully outfitted and operational. So while we do have those vehicles, it's important to note that we just have 1 that's actually out there doing patrol at this point.
When's your projection to get them all online?
Unfortunately, we're on standby. There was a delay in getting the contract signed, so we're on the back of the list. So we have a vehicle up there right now that's waiting to be done, but that's just the way the chips fell based on the fact that the contract was signed later on down the line. So, given that fact, maintenance costs and what I'll call old vehicles still in the fleet have cost expenditures of nearly $11,000, or 55% of the allotted $20,000 that we have available for fleet maintenance. We anticipate, that's at this point right now, 7 months into the year, $11,000. We anticipate that the fleet maintenance will continue to require high levels of service as we continue to use older vehicles, which we are still using 2 vehicles right now of the older fleet. In order for us to remain in compliance with employee safety and the CBA, these cruisers have to be replaced. And we'll see as we go down the line here, we'll talk about mileage and the issues that these vehicles are facing, and of course, the officers in them and the people that are in them, or the civilians. So because of delays in delivery 2007, that's what we just talked about. We're experiencing these heightened costs due to maintenance, and we can go through the various levels of disrepair. I won't take time doing that right now, but everything from diminished blue light lumens and the lumens of the headlights, which certainly I would say as a patrolman, very important when you're roadside for the safety of everybody involved, to include pitted glass. We could go down, but they're aged vehicles. They're simply aged vehicles. So you can see,
What page you on?
I'm on page, I'm on page 4 or 5 right now.
Okay.
And I think it might make sense at this point if we move to the CIP supporting data.
Okay.
So,
That's the Weare Police Department CIP.
I'm sorry, yes it is.
That'd be 2018. That's for next year.
Right, I think the chief titled that as he's delivering it today, but it is for next year.
But it's for fiscal year.
Correct. So this is the sheet I'm looking at right now that has the cruiser up in the top.
Page 3.
Correct, so for simplification purposes, the two cruisers that we're talking about replacing are units 7 and 9, and we've colored those in red.
Okay.
Jan, you can see, that's what, the 7 and 9 right there. I know you don't have a colored copy right there. And if you look at Unit 7, which is 2008 Ford Crown Victoria, for comparison purposes, the 2016 mileage was 118 and change. It was 118,221 miles. As it stands right now, it's 138,539 miles, which is a significant increase.
How about number 9 there?
Number 9, which is a 2011, again, that's a Ford Crown Victoria.
You don't have a current mileage on that?
We do.
Is that the SUV?
The Crown Vic.
Is that a Crown Vic?
That's what it
6
says.
is the SUV.
Yeah, I can get you that number.
Where is the, the sport?
I'm sorry,
It's
Unit
6.
6 is, Unit 6 is the SUV, that's
Yeah,
correct.
okay, sorry.
I'll have to get that number
Okay.
to you.
And 8 is the chief's car.
That's correct. So the 3 up top, the blue, those are the Chargers, and in the immediacy, what we're talking about is 7 and 9.
Okay.
So we're asking for, if we drop down for the bottom half of this page, the planned fleet replacement and projected cost. Again, looking at that top red column, we're talking about a new purchase.
Right.
Dodge, all-wheel drive, by the way, and we can certainly talk about the need for that. We're requesting 2 vehicles in 2018, and that cost would be $89,237. Obviously, there would be equipment needed in the planned replacement year of 2022.
Okay. I guess the question is, you show 8 cars, and you're gonna replace 2 of them, so you end up with 8 cars if you get the 2, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So, one of the cars is used for the chief, one is for the ACO, the dog person, or animal.
Animal control officer.
And, okay. And the number the cost of the actual price of the vehicle, well, last year was like $27,000. And $15,000 was for all the stuff that goes into it,
Understood.
roughly.
Right, so,
And the reason for the high price of all the stuff going in is because nothing's fungible from the Crown Vic.
absolutely, they're basically referred to as scrap quality at this point.
What I'm saying is, like the fence between the front and back, the lights don't fit, all that stuff doesn't fit.
Right, we're talking apples and oranges from a Ford Crown Victoria to a Dodge Charger, just would not fit.
So that would give you 5 frontline cruisers, correct?
Correct. sorry, it's 6, yeah, 6
You know,
plus
the
1.
Explorer
Would the
still.
Explorer be one of them? Okay, yeah,
Yes, it would be 6.
okay, I got it now, okay, I just wanna make sure I
Yeah,
get
no, I
this straight.
understand that.
And have you, if this did happen, do you know the savings that we would have on the maintenance? Because we're basically getting rid of almost everything that's beyond, well, with the exception of the ACO card.
Sure.
Everything else would be 11, 13, 17, and 18, correct?
Well, the chief's car's
So
2008
eight's
too.
still there, correct?
Eight's
Eight
still
is the
there.
chief's time.
8 is the chief's vehicle, correct.
There's a what?
Chief's vehicle.
Chief
Oh,
vehicle
yeah,
number 8.
thank you.
And if you look down at the bottom of that, the bottom section of this page that you're looking at, it says future fleet repair costs after 2019
Mhm.
are projected to be significantly reduced from the 2016 fleet repair cost. 75% reduction as an estimation.
Okay,
So-
so 75% of what?
20, he said 20.
Of 20.
Let's make
It's
sure,
actually
because you got 30 in the
30,000.
budget.
It's
right?
30 in the budget. This year it was reduced to
So
20. 30,000. So it'd
you're
be
saying it would go to what?
I don't have that number, but it would be 75%.
They go from 30,000 down to 7.5.
And he's estimating that based on, if we look, and I know I'm bouncing around here, but if we look at this for the future replacement cost, the replacement plan, you look at year 2020, that marks our notable change, where we would replace one cruiser from 2017 purchase and replace the ACO van. So that's the turning point where we would actually be
Oh, okay.
utilizing equipment that we already own and putting it into a new cruiser, so we wouldn't have to purchase.
Because most of it will be covered by, how many year warranty is it? Is it 3 or 5 year?
I'm not sure.
Anybody remember from last year? What the warranty on the 2017s was? I thought we would have like a 5-year warranty. Yeah, 5, so
5-year warranty.
So most of the fleet will be covered by
The warranty.
warranty, if anything, except for tires, oil changes, stuff like that. Right?
Understood.
So even equipment.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. Yes.
Okay. Now I understand why you're estimating a drop.
Okay.
So we're gonna reduce the cost by 22,500 if you're reducing it by 75%.
I have 75% reduction. That's the number that was
So
presented to me.
22,500. Okay.
Okay. Why don't you take an action, Brian, to kind of come in with something written down so we can take a look at it? As far as, I'm not trying to shove you into a corner to say, what's it gonna be? But you have, a cost from last year was even like $78,000
Okay.
on top of the 30. We figured it couldn't possibly be more than 30, and guess what happened? It was like 78,000. This year, we're running under because most of the things that could go really bad have been very fixed,
Sure.
right?
Right. So you're asking that I come in with?
Well, I think for the chief,
Mhm.
you speak for the chief.
Of course.
If you're asking for replacement vehicles, there should be a payoff for having vehicles that are sort of good to go. And if there are major issues, they're covered by warranty. So most of the issues would be tires, oil changes, stuff that are, the wear issues on, and maybe a set of brakes in the future. But most of these cars would, 5 out of the 8 will be fairly good shape, and all the old vehicles, for the most part, will be gone.
Correct.
So there should be an expectation of a reduction of that. I don't know if 75 cents is the right number, that sounds pretty high, but I think, and I'll look at the trend for the last 2 years and figure out what it is. I think that's an important factor, because we don't get any savings,
You know,
as a,
the other thing we talked about last year, Jack, was for routine maintenance, oil changes and stuff, that would be done over at the highway
Highway.
yeah, they
department.
still gotta buy the 55-gallon drum of oil.
Well, yeah,
Right.
Right.
but the
And-
labor's gonna be the big kicker there. It's not gonna be the oil and the
Correct.
filters.
Correct, but you still need some line item for that, for your expense. And, because you were buying engines and transmissions for that 30,000, which became 78 last year, or some
Yes,
big number.
It was
So,
big.
in the mid-year, they said it can't possibly be more than 30, because we only had 22 the prior year. Well, if you run junk, sooner or later, everything's gonna quit, and you guys can't afford to be not without something that'll work.
That's understood, right, yes. Bigger problems, the older the vehicles got, the higher the expenses went, sure.
I guess I'd ask the chief, you, to get with Beth,
Mhm.
and figure out what, and condition why that's the thing. Maybe in 2019, it'll still be fairly substantial, we've still got older vehicles and these new ones come in. Because even when we bought the, yes,
I just want to make a statement. On that, it says that the projected to be significantly reduced in 2016.
Beth, I hate to have you do this,
Oh,
but
sure.
could you come up to the mic, because this is for the benefit of people at home.
Oh, okay. Well, on page 3 in the bottom that Lieutenant was pointing out, it says that the 75% reduction, I think it's from the 2016 repair cost. I don't know if that was the budgeted amount,
Wow.
because
The
16's
actuals
budget
was
amount was larger.
78,000.
Okay, so it's just the repair cost, not the budgeted amount.
Yeah.
Okay, because the warrant article last year said
I'm
that
just
the
saying, it
cruisers.
sounds like that needs to be firmed up.
Yeah, okay.
And whatever that should be, go off and come back or send an email just so we have something on it, because I think that's important. When you buy new equipment, you should be purging yourself of the junk, getting it out. And so you're not dealing with it. And there's an expectation these things should be working and very little cost, but you still got other stuff that costs you money.
Yeah. The warrant article last year, I believe it reduced the budget amount by 10,000 if the vehicles were approved. So is that what you're asking for to see again?
I'm just asking, come up with a number. We don't want to divide it for you.
Yeah.
But take the time, figure it out, and bring it back to us.
Okay, we can do that, 75%. Work on a numerical figure.
Well, whether it's 75 or 50, I don't know, and we don't know of what. So I think that's the question.
Understood.
Okay?
Okay. So if we're on page 4 or 5 of the arrows here.
So what the chief is, if I can look at this, he's coming up with a rotation of vehicles, and so he has vehicles that don't require significant maintenance.
And again, I'll just back up and say he's put 10% across the board here,
Right.
just as
Or
a
inflation, which I would suggest is pretty high.
plus or minus, but that's the number.
Much more
Okay.
plus, it's up there. Okay.
Right.
But you're just suggesting that there is a strategy for replacement in the future, which may or may not come depending on force.
Right.
Okay.
And at one point, when we get to the green here, we're asking to replace 2-to-1 ratio, replace 2 cruisers, and next year replace 1 cruiser, 2 and 1, 2 and 1.
That was discussed at length last year. And that allows you to have cruisers that you can actually sell.
They would have some value,
Have
for sure.
significant value
Correct.
after a 5-year period. Okay. Frank, do you have anything else you wish to?
I would just, I would, speaking, roughly 13 years of working here and being in and around these vehicles, I would just say that be in keeping with our mission. These vehicles, they're not reliable. And quite frankly, that's a real issue. It's an issue for the officers that need to be in and around these vehicles, certainly the civilians as well. We do transport people post-arrest. So the safety factor, I would speak on that behalf. I could take up a bunch of time there. But there are real issues. I mean, let's take one snapshot of the deteriorating inner door panels of the prisoner compartment. These doors age. The window ages, the material ages, and quite frankly, that can be an issue when transporting people. So I think that, I know that the topic at hand is certainly fiscal, and it needs to be, but there's another component here that I really hope can pepper in, at least to some degree, and that it's just, when a Weare police cruiser is responding to a call for service, I would hope and quite frankly expect that people would be wondering why that car is en route. I would hope that they wouldn't be wondering whether or not the car will make it. We've been jump-starting these vehicles, and they've been dying on the side of the road. Quite frankly, Unit 2 That radio shuts down, it was shutting down before, in the middle of calls for service, and that's problematic. So I'm not gonna take up your time going too far down that path, but that's really, working here for this many years, I have that experience. on the
Yeah,
front
to that
line.
end, the chief last year, it became obvious that the price we were paying for repairs, we would buy one car easily in a year. And last year, we bought two cars for the price of the repairs.
Right.
So it becomes a question of diminishing returns. And you point out the other, not tangible, an important feature is the reliability and the safety aspect. Good.
And I think it was 4 months last year that we ate into that budget, and yeah, we for repair. Right, exactly. So, thank you for allowing me my first effort at this, and I will apologize for not having all the detailed information, but I can certainly get back to you.
And just, so if you get the mileage update, and you got all your hypothetical replacement of fleet, which is fine, that's what I asked Chief Nazim. You don't have such long-term replacement as they do. Any other questions for Lieutenant? Being none, thank you for your service to our community.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. We have Parks and Recs on the 19th.
Yeah, you have your list that I sent you as far as your schedule. You have Parks and Rec at 9 and Public Works at 9:30 on the 19th.
Is Parks and Recs coming in Miami, do you know?
I haven't heard from her. They're meeting, which worked out well. They're meeting the 12th. I won't know. She'll bring forms like everybody else does. And then the 26th, just last night we talked about at the board level, we're probably gonna have something possibly.
Now, isn't there something for the safety complex, the roof? Is that?
Well, that's on my list to get a
I've heard
price
that.
for, but there's other, we're gonna have more of a discussion, so I'm not gonna say the 26th is
Right.
second round. We may come in, because Tom talked about it last night.
Yeah, it makes sense for the selectmen to come in, because some buildings just aren't owned by an apartment.
Well, the town hall is a big discussion, and that's, needs some work.
Okay.
So the 26th, we gave you a tentative schedule when we first sent it. Those are still the meeting dates. But how we end up, where we end up is going to be, if you want to see a second round of the police, you want to see a second round of the fire, you'll need to let me know on the 19th, because the
Right.
26th would be when I bring them back.
Right. Yeah, we do that. And then basically, when that cycle is done, then we have enough, we do the whiteboard,
Right, and finalize.
which basically finalizes what we want to come forward and recommend. I guess I just want to touch on this committee. We're here to kind of like qualify the request as meets the intent of the planning, of the master plan. And, meaning that master plan expects you to have roads that are clear and in good shape. That means there's some requirement for equipment, also safety issues, fire and police, and recreation for Chase Park. So, make sure we don't have any goofy requests that doesn't pass the Google test, And then we make sure that the cost that's being requested is reasonable and represents the scale that people are asking for. What's the price of a car, what's the price of a truck, car or whatever else. So, yeah.
And as you get closer on the cars, 10%'s high. But
Yeah, I think
as
that's
we
kinda
get
high.
closer, you can get a more refined number.
Yeah, I can't believe 10%. They really have priced these cars down. $27,000 for a police cruiser, which is a high-performance vehicle, is cheap.
Well, you also, I don't know, I know in some of the stuff they bid through 18, so it may be the Dodge has got 18 and you'd have a number that they're stuck with until 18. I don't know what the date is.
Yeah. I guess,
But it's the upfit that
Right.
takes us by surprise sometimes.
right, it's 15,000.
Right, because they don't, that's not what I've seen on the bid list for the upfit, because everything is different. You might want a Ford, you might want a Dodge, you might get a big SUV, the state police and the Fish and Game are running the full-size Chevy Tahoes.
We should look to Beth and maybe yourself to help us with the inflationary question. You know, to me, 4% would be adequate. Who knows what's gonna happen if they,
Or we can look at what we paid versus what we told you last year as a
Correct.
percentage as well, because that's probably in line with something.
okay? Is there, any other business?
Now, can I ask you for an email for Gary?
His email?
Yeah, can you?
I'll
guys-
send you, I have his email.
So that we can include him on the
Yeah,
list
yeah.
and give him the schedule so that he knows.
I'll give you his phone and I get.
And we
I
can
have his-
probably scan this in and share it with him so that he's kind of aware, he won't get the conversation, but, I mean, if he watches it, because this is being taped, because I did ask the cable, so it can be replayed on YouTube, so, they
That's
timed it.
assuming you can get to YouTube.
So you can get it on a computer, you can do it on your tablet, you can do it on your phone if you really wanted to.
Okay, I'll get you Gary's. All set?
Okay, the bubble head.
I'm good.
All that?
No.
Being, okay. Adjourn? Motion to adjourn?
Make the motion to adjourn.
Second?
Thank you.
All right, Stu, you gotta put the TV on.
Stu and Steve.
No.